What is up, everybody? Greetings. Hello. Happy Sunday. Aquaba. We hope everyone is doing just so well as you can be. That hopefully that means your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. We are so glad that you decided to join us this day. We are looking forward to being able to continue our effort to break down my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. Today, we are really getting into the beginning parts of the meat of the book, Chapter 5, A Guide for Building Community Defense Work, where we talk about the steps you carry out to connect with the community and begin to do the work. So it should be very interesting to folks, and we're glad you're here for it. And we start, as we always do, by paying respects to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. We're talking about the people who identify as American Indian, Mexicano, Chicano, Latino, Puerto Ricano. These are the indigenous people and the descendants of the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. If that is not who you are, then you are not indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. You are merely a descendant of settlers who is in denial about how you exist in this hemisphere, or you are a confused African who knows nothing about Africa, so you feel the need to make up a history because you don't want to connect with the negative history of Africa, which is all you know that you learned from your slave master. So we don't deal with confusion, we deal with truth, right? So we're talking about the real indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. We pay respect to them, we acknowledge them, we do everything we can to support their struggle, which is a struggle to get this land back, because this is their land. We don't care how comfortable you are on their land, it's their land. And if you are doing work to bring about justice, which is returning the land to them, then you shouldn't have to worry about your personal future here, because they've done nothing but been the most gracious hosts one could possibly imagine. But if you're living the settler colonial lifestyle here, or supporting the settler colonial lifestyle, then I don't know, you might want to get your canoe ready, because at some point you're gonna have to go back. And we always have to respect our African ancestors, who are the very reason that we are here as African people, because that's what we are as African people. We're nothing but African people, no matter what kind of fantasies we want to believe in or what kind of confusion exists. We are African. And that is because we have dignity and respect for our history and our culture. And we respect the contributions of those who came before us so that we could breathe air today. And so we honor our ancestors, thousands of years of ancestors, 530 years of struggle. We honor that. And we're thankful again for all of you that are here for tonight's session, Chapter 5. We're going to really start to dig into community defense work. So we are so glad that you're here to join us. And we'll just go into our introductions to start today's session. And I am Ahjamu. The organization sponsoring our ancestors' voices is the All African People's Revolutionary Party, of which I'm a longtime member, proud to be a member, continue to work for the goals of this organization. And along with me is Shukura, who is my only child and also an organizer in the AAPRP, and completing her graduate student studies and doing outstanding work there and in the APRP. And I'm just glad and honored to share this space with her every week. And the objective of the AAPRP is Pan-Africanism, which we define as the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism, or one unified socialist Africa, as you see there. And that is the objective that we believe will do more than anything else to address the problems that African people face living in 120 countries worldwide, all 2.5 million of us living across the globe. None of us will be free until Africa is free. So that's our objective, and that's what we work for. And the way we do that is explained in the book on the right, Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. That will give you the strategy to achieve Pan-Africanism, which is uniting all revolutionary Pan-African forces on the ground. So you see some of the logos there from some of the participants who are engaged in that work. And so, you know, there are millions of us, you all. Don't believe what they tell you. There are millions of us who are fighting this fight. So we're engaged in it, and we will continue to engage it until we win. And also with that, we have chapters all over the world. I've had an opportunity to visit and work within many of them throughout Africa and Europe, and of course, this backward country. And we have relationships with other liberation movements, non-African movements who are fighting against settler colonialism, like what you have in this country, who are fighting against neo-colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, all of those, Zionism. So we continue to build those relationships. The stronger we are together, the faster victory will come upon us. So tonight, again, getting into the meat of the book, chapter 5, the steps we take to engage community defense work. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Shukura.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings, greetings. We just are in a space of gratitude as we continue to acknowledge there's other things that you all could be doing. We understand that your time is valuable and you are sacrificing to be here with us. We never want to take for granted that you've chosen to be with us. And as we continue to have these seminar of our ancestor voices each week, we also hope that this is giving you a different way to feel motivated or a different drive to continue to do the work that you are doing. If you are not currently organizing, hopefully this is helping you understand the tools that you can put in place from a strategic standpoint so that you can start to organize. Because as we've said before, and we'll say again, we are not even upset if you do not want to be a part of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. But we do for the sake of humanity. We do for the sake of the children yet to be born. We do for the sake of a world yet to be envisioned. Ask that you join some organization that is working for justice. Because the objective is, if all of us are involved with at least one organization that is working for a better world and a better humanity, then that's going to make it really hard for the oppressor and the systems of oppression to push against us. Because if we're all organizing, then there's going to be a larger number of us pushing back and resisting, right? And so we really want to encourage you to join an organization working for justice. We don't just say that because we enjoy speaking for the good of our health. And we certainly don't just say it because we want it to fall on ears that are not receiving the message. We say it because we have intentionality, and we need you to take that seriously and to take that stand. So again, if you are not involved with any organization that is working for justice, I strongly encourage you to reevaluate that and ask yourself, do you want to be a part of the solution? Or do you want to be a part of the problem? Because that is the crossroads that we find ourselves at, family. And unfortunately, you can't just not do anything. You have to choose a side. And my argument is, if you are not organizing, then you must be in support of the system that is oppressing us, because why else would you want to not work against that? So if you are organizing, then you're working against it. But if you're not in an organization working for justice, then to me, you're giving permission for capitalism to be as exploitive as it's being, which means that I don't have room for you in my business, as my grandfather would say. I can't use you, and you're certainly not going to help me become free. So we want to continue to remember that and continue to think about what that looks like, especially as it relates to Chapter 5, which gives some concrete definitions, it gives concrete strategies, and it gives legit concrete step by step. Chapter 5 is not asking you to swallow an organization as a whole pie. Chapter 5 is breaking down one particular slice of that pie for you and helping you understand bite by bite what you can do to establish an organizing space and circle. So I'm excited to talk to you about it today. I hope that you all will continue to think about what joining an organization looks like for you. And let's jump into it without further ado. So chapter 5 of A Guide of Organizing Defense Against White Supremacists, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence takes us to the place where everyone always claims they want to be and or are currently engaged. Yet once we get deep into it, we find that at this stage in our development, the overwhelming majority of us are nowhere near ready to tackle this phase of work. Chapter 5 has a focus of providing a methodology for how to select and proceed in developing community defense work that you will engage in directly. So you have already had the portion of the meeting where everyone has 1,000 ideas about what the problems are, why they are problems, and how we feel or they feel about the problems. Now, as we talk about chapter 5 is the portion of the meeting where you ask people to volunteer to take on assignments to address those problems. Anyone who actually does the work knows that this is always the most difficult part of any meeting, because it is this part where the rubber meets the road, where talk alone no longer suffices, where the action items must begin to take shape. This is the portion of your journey which determines whether you are serious about engaging in revolutionary work to transform society, or if you are just along for the ride until a better thrill comes along. And I just would encourage us to just think about for a moment why this is so difficult. It's very easy for people to talk about issues that exist, but when you actually want people to put action where their suggestions are, or where their complaints are, or where their concerns are, now you're asking people to be responsible and to be accountable. And unfortunately, what we have seen, those of us who can say we, because we're organizing, what we have seen is it's so much easier for people to not actually be integral and to not actually be credible and to not follow through with what they see a problem being. So they have no problem complaining about the problem all day long under the sun. But when you actually go to them and say, so comrade or family, what are your suggestions on how we go about dealing with that? You probably hear crickets, or you may hear them say, well, I don't know how to go about dealing with it, but I know it's a problem and I don't like, yes, we've established that. We know that it's a problem. What do you plan to do about it? Or what do you suggest we do about it together? And that's where it becomes a different conversation. A lot of that is based on our socialization in this inhumane society too, is it's not about what you can do, because when you do push back, you usually get punished of some type. So I think people have associated that they don't want to push back because they don't want to, quote unquote, get in trouble or get arrested and go to jail. But obviously that has nothing to do with the betterment of humanity. And so the question becomes, how much are you willing to sacrifice? How much are you willing to put on the line if that did come to that point? I personally have not been incarcerated yet, but the people that we're reading about in work study, all three of the authors that we've read about so far have all been incarcerated. And I'm starting to see a pattern with the fact that they all were standing up because they believed they were doing what was right for the masses of humanity. And so I humbly would like my legacy to be that people knew that I tried to fight for them before I die, the last breath that I take. And so if that means being incarcerated, I'll have to cross that bridge when I come to it. But I know that I can humbly sleep well at night because I know that that's what matters to me. That's what matters to my character. And I would like to think that's what my parents worked really hard to instill in me, is that it's not about me. I need to think about the masses of people because that's who helped me be where I am today. And so it's literally a cycle of continuing on and doing for unborn children, making this world a better place for children who haven't even been conceived yet, because it's not even about us right now in 2021. It's about the children of 3042. It's about the animals of 9025. It's about the plants in 50,000 years to come, the plants and how will they exist. That's what this is all about, is making a better world for those to come after us. So we got to put action. We can't just have complaints. We got to have actions on how to address it. Because if none of our ancestors had actions on how to address the issues they had, you and I would not be sitting here today. It biologically and ideologically would not be possible. So we have to think about that so that we can cease these problems from existing and put an end to them and prevent them and reduce them and eradicate them so that they don't become problems for our future generations. Chapter 5 starts this portion of the journey on page 50, when you are tasked to begin work to decide where and what type of work it is you will involve yourself in building within a community. It is a critical stage because once you start the ball rolling, there is enough of an idea where you have to understand you're committed and there's really no turning back at that point. Next slide, please. All right, so these initial steps for how you approach selecting the work you do will be rooted in doing the necessary research of the community you will be working in. Who lives in this community? How will you determine what issues plague that community? What will be your strategic approach for how you will engage that community around those issues? How will you go about introducing yourself and your objectives to that community? These are just some of the questions you will need to figure out before you go into that community. And so we kind of want to create a study guide for you, if you will. You need to understand who lives there, who are you going to be talking to, who is your audience. You're also thinking about how are you going to help the community decide what issues plague that community. I'm sure there are 1,000 issues, and the book talks about that. And so thinking about how do we help narrow down, I'm speaking from page 51 specifically, how do we help narrow down what some of these problems are, because every problem is significant, but we might not be able to tackle all 50 of them in our first meeting, right? So how do we narrow down the problem that we're trying to focus on at this point that is driving this circle meeting to start and to have our first meeting around, and then also keeping in mind, how are you going to engage the community around those issues? What if one of the issues that is selected is not the issue that some of the first couple of people came with? And so you have to kind of pull them in and help them understand, no, this actually impacts all of us because of X, Y, and Z. So we want to try to come from a unified standpoint and focus on this, because that way we'll be able to all benefit from it when the outcome is this, or whatever the projected outcome may be from your conversation. This also means that it's important to consider at this stage before you begin, what is the state of mind and spirit towards approaching this work? Are you doing the best work that you can to develop to ensure you are in a position in a healthy way to carry out these initial assignments in a positive way as possible? So what's going on with your state of mind? Are you organized before you go into that community, or are you still trying to get your thoughts together? Are you still trying to put stuff down on a flip chart paper while the meeting was supposed to start 30 minutes ago? Like, all of these things factor in to how the messages are being sent to the community, and more importantly, how you build your credibility of being one of the organizers to help jumpstart this organization. So all of that is going to be really critical in terms of the prep time. So you want to incorporate time to actually prep, just like you would if you were teaching in a classroom, so that by the time you get to the space where you can have this dialogue and these conversations, all you have to do is take notes at that point, but you're not necessarily still getting ready for a meeting that has already begun, if that makes sense. And so just thinking about that and thinking about your state of mind, thinking about how you want to make sure that you're healthy so that you can carry out these assignments in the best possible way. You need to make sure that you don't have an overabundance of confidence, or you will need an overabundance of confidence. You'll need an overabundance of patience. Humility, of course, is always necessary when you're doing this kind of work, and maybe even some humor to help carry out these extremely delicate yet essential elements of this work. These stages are all building blocks, and you're setting up a new baseline for you to stand on from this. Many, many, many years to come, people might still be using your baseline. And so you're literally setting a foundation for new generations to follow. If done correctly, you will use this space to launch a strong and fortified project for community defense. If not done correctly, you will contribute further damage to an already fragile reality for the people you pledge to work with. Take time to ensure you are in a positive place mentally, spiritually, and physically to bring your best self to this layer of of work. And family, I so apologize. My sinuses are on high alert today. So I do hope that my notes were clear to you all. Feel free to put questions in the chat if I was too nasally and you didn't understand what I was trying to say. Stay committed to the fight, join an organization working for justice, and we will talk soon. Y'all be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, my daughter. I appreciate you. You don't have to apologize for that. You inherited my genes, and I'm allergic to capitalism, so I have sinus year round. When I'm speaking, I sneeze and I tell people I'm allergic to capitalism, and people laugh because they're allergic to it too. So I thank you for that foundation and wanting to move into that. But I wanted to start this section off digging deeper into these critical steps in terms of how you organize in communities by saying that I wrote this book because based on experiences that I've had doing organizing work for decades now. And the reason why I say that is not to brag about anything, but because the biggest challenge we face in doing organizing work is that we live in a bourgeoisie capitalist society. And what that means is that idealism is the dominant form of thinking in this society. What is idealism? Idealism is when immaterial reality dominates over material reality. So immaterial reality, and a definition of that is an idea you have in your head. It's not based in anything existing here on earth. It's just a thought that you have in your head. Material reality is everything you see around you that's made of material matter, meaning it carries weight and occupies space, including yourself, right? So when we say idealism, what we're saying is that ideas that are not based in any of the laws of material existence dominate in this society over material reality. So because somebody believes, like in this society, people can say things based on what's in their head, right? Like they can say, well, racism doesn't exist, patriarchy doesn't exist, women aren't oppressed. People say stuff like that all the time, right? And they believe it. And the reason why they do that is because in this society, again, bourgeoisie idealism is dominant. So we just described what idealism is. Bourgeoisie, that's the ruling class, the people who are either own and control the multinational corporations that dominate world economy today, or the people that they've appointed to be their spokespersons, which are like the president of this country, the vice president, the leaders of Congress. These are their spokespeople. They represent their interests. That's their job, is to do that, is to represent the interests of the people who run this country. That's why you never, ever see any of these politicians, on a national level. They're not going to ever say, capitalism, we need to get rid of capitalism. That's never going to happen, you all, because that's not their job. Their job is to represent the system. So just by virtue of that, any ideas that come out that are not challenging the system are automatically, by default, supporting the bourgeoisie. So that's why we say bourgeoisie idealism, because these ideas that we have that we think are our own ideas and we came up with them. No, these ideas are created for us by the bourgeoisie. And because we believe them, then we're representing the interests of the people who are oppressing the majority of people on the planet Earth. And I'll give you a quick example. Everyone has seen those puzzles or memes or whatever they are. And what the way it presents itself is that you'll see a picture. And the instructions will be, look at the picture, and there'll be a suggestion about what you should see in the picture. Like it might be someone's face. And then they'll give you another set of instructions that describe a different reality in the picture. And then when you look at the picture a second time, you see a different face, or you see a different thing altogether than what you saw the first time. So how is that possible? Like, how does that happen? How does the same set of eyes, the same brain, see two different realities in the same picture? Well, the reason why that happens is because the suggestion the first time planted an idea in your head. And all your eyes do is interpret the data that comes from your brain. That's all your eyes do. They are not an independent function that functions independently of your brain, even though people act like they think that's what your eyes do. They don't. All they do is interpret data that is supplied to your brain, from your brain to your eyes. They interpret that. So because there was an original suggestion, your eyes interpreted one thing. And then when you got a second suggestion, your eyes interpreted something else. So since we all have seen those, what that should tell us is that it's absurd to suggest that, well, my mind thinks independently just on its own. Of course it does. Every single aspect of our existences here are programmed into us. And the best we can do is make a conscious decision to fight against that. But there is none of us think independently. That's a fantasy. If that was true, then you would not have people who have never seen you, you've never seen them. They talk the same as you talk the same as them, you dress the same, wear your hair the same way, eat like the same kind of foods, listen to the same music. You've never seen each other. So how is this possible? Because clearly there's a programming effort taking place. And that's what capitalism does. So we have to understand that, because if we don't, then we'll think that, and I say this because I'm encountering this a lot. Like, again, I wrote this book based on work that I've done, experiences on the ground I've had. And I'm constantly having to debate people. People are like, well, I don't know if this will work because of this. And I'm like, but that's why the steps are laid out. You try the steps and you do it correctly. And then if it doesn't work, then you can come back and say, well, I don't know. But right now, you don't even know what you know because you haven't done anything. So it's important for us to understand, like, the importance of engaging in the work and not confusing our thinking we know what the work is to actually knowing what it is. Okay, so what is the essential research that we have to do? So Shukura mentioned, once you figure out where you want to do your work, and it could be anywhere, it could be an inner city community, it could be a reservation, so-called reservation. There's no such thing really, because all of this land belongs to Indigenous people. But where they have forced Indigenous people to live, those places are called reservations. So it could be there, it could be in a working class white community, it could be wherever it is. All right. So once you decide to do that, the first thing you're going to need to do is get an understanding of what's happening in that community. And what we mean by that is develop some demographic information. And you can use, there's tons of sources, even online, starting with the Census Bureau. You don't want to use the Census Bureau, you can find many others. But the point is that you want to be able to determine certain characteristics of the neighborhood you're in. And you should select, like, say you select a 10 by 10 block radius of your neighborhood. So 20 blocks, let's just use that for example. So in that 20 block radius, like, who lives there? What is the average age of the people? What's the median income? What's the median education level? What are the ethnic demographics? So it's a predominantly African neighborhood. Okay, so you've established that. It's a predominantly African neighborhood where the majority of people have a high school diploma. It has the highest arrest record from the police in the city. Okay, it has 20% of the people there, English is not their first language. Those types of things, those are the things you need to know. And then once you establish that, you determine, okay, this is the neighborhood I like. It's a predominantly, quote unquote, black and brown neighborhood, for example. But they're Europeans, they're white people that live there, but they're poor white people. They're working class white people. Okay, that's the neighborhood I want. Those are the people I want to work with. It's education is low, arrest rates are high, there's a lot of police activity, there's high drug usage. That's the majority of the reason people are arrested in the neighborhood. You want to know all of that because that helps you right there. Just from what I just said, you've been able to identify already several things happening in the neighborhood, several issues happening in the neighborhood. So you have to do that work first. And then once you do that, then you know what information you need and you gather that information using the sources I just mentioned. You gather that information. It's not going to be perfect, okay, but it will give you an idea of what that neighborhood looks like. And maybe you might have, if you live in a large metropolitan area, like say you live in Chicago or Miami or New York or LA or something, you might have several neighborhoods that you can gather this information for and compare and figure out what you're looking for. All right. And so you do that. And then how do you find that out? I mean, like I said, there's so many sources. And, again, this is only an hour that we do this. So we can't explain everything about chapter 5 of the book in an hour. We can't even explain the book in an hour. We can't explain everything even about that one chapter. But as we have said consistently, if you reach out to us, we will be happy to take you through the steps of how to do this work, because again, we have done this work. We continue to do it. So we know how to do it. So if you want to know how to do it, we'll show you how to do it. We don't charge you to show you how to do it. We're revolutionaries. We're trying to create a better world. We just ask, the only payment you need is to be serious about doing this. And if you have that, we'll show you how to do that. So we can show you how to develop the information. And then once we've gone through that steps, what are the tactics that you want to use to approach the community, right? Like, how do you engage people? So you have this demographic information. So in chapter 5, it talks about you want to come up with 4 or 5 questions, and then you want to survey the community. So we said 10 by 10 block radius. So say, for example, there's 3,000 people that live in that 10 by 10 block radius. And you calculate that based on that, you want to knock on every one of those doors. So it's 3,000 people. Let's say it's 1,800 doors, okay? Because more than one person lives, in a lot of the circumstances. So 1,800 doors. So you create a plan for how you can knock on 1,800 doors. It may take you a while, depending upon how many people you have. And you create a script, and you create questions. And your script is, first off, you want to be 100% honest when you're talking to people. The whole point of this work is to have a different approach than the capitalist system, where everybody's lying because they want to try to get, as that great philosopher, my deceased mother used to say all the time, everybody got their hand out in this society. Well, that was her way of saying that's how capitalism works. Everybody's trying to get something from you. So you don't want to be like that. So you want to be honest. And so when I knock on doors, I'm 100% honest. Hello, my name is Ahjamu. I'm an organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. I don't try to water it down because I don't want to scare people. They're already scared. And if they aren't, they should be. And it's certainly not me that they need to be afraid of. So the way that I'm going to get them out of that kind of thinking is I'm going to be honest and tell them that's who I am. And I can tell you all, I've knocked on thousands of doors. Again, bourgeoisie idealism, because a lot of people think, well, once I tell them that organization or whatever your organization's name is, they're not going to want to talk to me. I have never once had one person say, well, wait, what's your organization? I don't want to talk to you. I'm scared of that. Not one person has done that. And I'm not even just talking about African, European people, white people. Not one person has done that. Every time I knock on the door and say that, people's response every single time is, okay, like they want to know what you want. And then I tell them, well, I'm knocking on your door. This is your script. Because we're going around in the community. We're trying to find out what the issues are in the community. That's all you have to say, you all. I guarantee you. I know a lot of people don't believe it because, again, bourgeoisie idealism. You think somebody's going to pull out a Glock and shoot you for knocking on their door, because that's what capitalism has trained us to be, is afraid of each other. So because we're afraid of each other, we'll never do this work, and we'll never change our conditions. But again, I've done this. And so once I tell people I'm here, we want to know what the issues are, that's all I need to do, you all. That's all you need to do. You can see the tension lifted once you say that. Now they know you're not there to get any money that's not your purpose for being there. And so I asked them, I mentioned the 4 or 5 questions, start asking them questions. What are the issues that concern you about this neighborhood? And they will trust me, they will tell you, well, I want, there's a food desert. We don't have good food. The schools are, they criminalize our kids. The police harass us all the time. You know, it's the same issues everywhere, but that's the kind of stuff they're going to tell. There's abusers here that abuse the women here. It's not safe on the streets. Our kids can't even play outside. This is what they're going to say to you all. And then you document that. You have information where you can document, you know, what the people are saying. And then after you say that, you ask them, well, what is it about you that makes you continue going despite all that? Well, I got a family. I want to make sure my family is safe. I care about my neighborhood. I think, you know, before this gentrification happened or whatever it is, this was happening. Now it's all this. So then now you've learned from them in just a 2-minute conversation what's happening in their neighborhood and what they care about. And then you only have one question left you have to ask. And that's, so what would you be willing to do to address these things? That's all you do. It's not like they're going to say, what am I willing to do? Get the hell away from my house. No, they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you one way or another. They're either going to tell you, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go to work, earn money, save my money, and move out of here. Okay, then you know, like that person is probably someone that will support the work, but that's not someone you're going to be able to depend on to do the work. But you will have some people, again, you're knocking on 1,800 doors. You will have some people that will tell you, you know, I have some ideas about what, but I'm not sure. What did you have in mind? Well, a lot of this is what we're thinking. Okay, well, I would like to help with that. Okay, now it says recruitment ideas on the screen. That's your first potential recruit. They've told you that they want to do something to change the community. So you now know that's a person you can call on to do the work. That's one of the people you want to make the face of the work, because it's not about you. You're an organizer. You're not the face of the work. It's the people that live in the community. So that's the people who answer that way. Those are the people you want to recruit to be your leaders. Those are the steps you take. And again, it's just absolutely necessary to be honest and transparent. You know, when I've been doing this work with some of the younger organizers in the party, and we're going door to door, they always ask, it doesn't matter what city, what state, doesn't matter. They always ask me, well, what if I knock on the door and white people answer? Nothing changes. The same thing, take through the same steps. Like their thinking is that, like, if I tell them I'm with the AAPRP, they're going to call the police on me. But that's because, again, we're dominated with bourgeoisie idealism. And so these thoughts that are in our head that have been handed to us by our enemies, these people live in this neighborhood. They suffer the challenges in this neighborhood. They don't suffer them any worse than our people because they're white. They see it too. So you knock on the door saying we want to do something about the problems. They are not going to see you as the enemy. It might take a while for them to trust it because so many charlatans operate among the masses of people on earth, but they're not going to immediately assume that's garbage that's in your head. That has nothing to do with the community. And like Shukura said, if you haven't done the preparatory work to prepare yourself to get rid of that garbage, you need to do more work, because you can't go in the community with that garbage in your head, that anti-people community. That's like, I was knocking on doors the other day here, and I was talking to the people that are going to do it with me. And we were just doing an initial thing. We weren't even at the point of collecting data and recruitment. And this woman was sitting in her car because we were in a park, and she overheard, she said, I just want to, you know, she was from petty bourgeoisie nonprofit. And she was like, you just got to be careful around here. And the people I was working with, I explained it to them when we walked off, but I told her, I said, these are our people that live here. It's 2021. We can't be afraid of our people. We're just talking about talking to our people. And you're telling us we need to be afraid. I know you mean well, but that's not the approach that we want to take here. Like, that's what, you know, she's like, well, I've done work here for years. I'm like, well, you obviously haven't done enough, because if you had done the work, then you would know that that's not true, what you're saying. You know, I mean, but anyway, that's a whole different discussion. The point is, you have to be honest. And when I've knocked on doors and Europeans have answered, I've told them same thing. I'm Ahjamu, All African People's Revolutionary Party. What are the issues here? They answer the questions just as well as anybody else. And by the time I'm done with them, 2.5 minutes into it, they're like, I know some, when we were doing it for the breakfast program, when we were in Portland, Oregon, in New Columbia, 2015, the white people would answer their doors and they'd be like, the neighbor here, Sharonda, I'll let her know. She got 3 kids. They were helping us. And they would send, and they were like, can our kids come? I'm like, if you don't have any problem with your kids learning about African history, your kids are welcome. And if you don't believe me, you can go to our site, my site, it's on the screen there, betterworld.me. There's pictures up there of our breakfast program in Portland. There's one picture that it's me serving juice to all white kids. And that happened a lot. A lot of white kids came through and they learned about African history, which is good, because if they learn about African history, maybe they won't be so inclined to join the Proud Boys. Since white people ain't doing the work to organize them out of the Proud Boys, somebody got to do something. So this is why we got to do this. All right. So that's the first phase that we go through. Of course, with any work that's worthwhile, there's going to be tremendous obstacles, you all. That's just a given, especially since the capitalist system is the enemy of humanity, and it is organizing day and night to sabotage any efforts to challenge it. Just because you don't see it or know how to identify it doesn't mean it's not happening. It is happening. So they're constantly attacking people. And the biggest way they do that is through their propaganda, this dominance of bourgeoisie idealism. That's the biggest weapon they have, because they've got people out here thinking that individualism is the only way that we can function in the world, and that we cannot trust each other. Elitism, like nobody can do things better than I can. Impatience, everybody's impatient and proud of it. And impatience is certainly a primary tenet of capitalist bourgeoisie ideology. Because if you think about it, the roots of impatience are that you don't think this person is doing what you think they should be doing. So in essence, what you're saying is that you don't think they're as smart as you. You don't think they're as skilled as you. That's elitist to think that, because I guarantee you that there's something that you don't do as well as other people. And so does that mean you're dumber than them? Or no, of course not. It just means we all have different things that we excel at and different things that we have to struggle with and get better at. So there's no place for impatience in this work. I mean, everybody had to learn. None of us came out of the room seasoned and skilled revolutionaries. So we all have to have patience with people, because somebody had patience with us. So we have to use those things to prepare for the obstacles. And, one of the obstacles is, again, this propaganda from the bourgeoisie system, this overwhelming sentiment that we can't win. We can't defeat the system. There's no matter what we do, they will always win. People believe that. Some of you listening believe that right now. I don't believe it, but some of you listening believe that. And it's demonstrated by our actions, because we won't commit to do something to solve this problem, because we don't believe it to be possible. So we think the best I can do is just do something for myself and my family. And that's what we think. And that's exactly what the capitalist system wants us to think, because they know that kind of individualistic thinking will never mount a serious challenge to its dominance. That's why they know that. Not saying you're a bad person, not saying that, but just explaining to you what's going on out here, because some of us are not confused. We see it happening. So we have to overcome this overwhelming sentiment that we can't win. And we have to do that by constantly building the people up. Most of us are used to disciplining our liar. In other words, we don't have, that's written incorrectly, and I apologize for that, but most of us don't have the discipline to follow through. And we have to do that. We have to follow through. We have to be consistent. We have to train ourselves to do that. I had a conversation the other day, and I've had this conversation often. Somebody came late to a meeting and they were like, well, I had to work. And they said that like, that's what's important. Like, our people's liberation and justice is not important. It's subordinate to our jobs. And I told that person, like, that's not acceptable to me. I mean, I'm gonna tell you something, if you leave and never come back, that's on you, because you just weren't serious in the first place. So I'm not gonna even worry. I'll tell you, if you leave and come back, I am not going to lose any sleep over it. But I told him, I'm going to tell you that that's not acceptable. You know, you're sitting there confidently saying to us that you don't matter as much to me as my slave master. That's not what I'm saying. And then other people like, it kind of is, you know, it kind of is what you're saying. Like, hey, and I tell people all the time, like, I have never elevated my job above this struggle for justice. I've never done that. In fact, I have a saying, the All African People's Revolutionary Party is at the same time the best and the worst thing that has ever happened to me. And because of that, I have a conscious obligation to carry out this work. It's the best thing because it's made me the person I am. It's the worst thing because I got to deal with all of you all the time. And sometimes that is just not fun, you all. Just not fun at all. Because people are a trip. People are a trip. I know, you know, people sit there and tell me or argue with me and like tell me at the same breath, like I don't read. But they'll argue about things that I've been studying and working on for decades. They'll argue. Like, that's a trip to me. I don't know, maybe it doesn't seem strange to anyone else, but that's very strange to me, and it's taxing. That's why I need this foundation, because that's what you got to have to deal with this. So because most of us are not disciplined to follow through, you're going to have to help people learn how to do that, and it's going to require a ton of patience. It's going to require a ton of patience to do that. And then, you know, most of us don't know how to communicate effectively with each other. You know, we don't, like, I try to communicate down to the T. Who's going to be where, what time, who's carrying out what assignment, everything. That's how I think we have to learn how to communicate with one another, because people don't do that. Like, you know, people will, okay, so the meeting, this is how we communicate. This is what I mean by we don't communicate effectively. Okay, there's a meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. and we're going to plan out our work at that meeting. And there's 10 people in the room when that's said. No one, y'all, you know what I'm about to say. You've experienced this, I guarantee you. No one says anything at that point, and then you adjourn. Now, 5 of them people never had any intention of coming to that 6 p.m. meeting, but they didn't communicate that. And another couple of people are going to be late, like 30 minutes late. They didn't communicate that. They didn't say anything. And so you get there and nobody's there. I know if you try to do anything, you've had this experience. And then you start texting, calling people. Oh, I'm not coming. Well, why didn't you say that? We could have rescheduled. We could have done. So you got to learn how to communicate effectively. And that gets back to being honest and transparent. Because I would argue, I know people might get offended, but I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to say what I think needs to be said. So that to me is a form of dishonesty. When you hear a meeting that you're a part of that you know is depending upon you to be a contributing member, is happening, and you know you're not going to participate, and you don't even say anything, that's dishonest. I'm not saying that you're sitting there saying, there are many forms of dishonesty. Not saying that you're sitting there saying, I am going to consciously lie to these people. No, dishonesty has many forms, many substances. And the proper definition of dishonesty is engaging in behavior that's not designed to communicate the correct ideas. And so the correct ideas is that, no, that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to be there. I have something else to do, or I just need a break, or whatever the situation. Just be honest so that people can effectively organize around, you know, whatever needs to be organized around. Very important. And developing that kind of honest standard, it just raises you should try it. Even if you just have a relationship, you know for a fact, if you have a relationship with someone, if you have a standard of honesty, your relationship is going to be a much higher level than if the relationship starts out with lies. There's not a sane person hearing this that would disagree with that. And so if that's true and you agree with that, then you know that's also true with organizations. It's the same principle. Same principle. So you have to establish that. And then getting back to, you know, the actual steps of the work, how do you engage the community? So once you've had your focus that we've talked about, you know, then you begin to organize activities to bring more people together. So you've talked to the people and you've said, like, for example, in your community, you want to use this abuser thing. There's so many abusers. You don't want the police involved. but you want to eliminate the abusers from abusing women and marginalized genders. So you explain that, and you've gotten 5 people in the community to be like, yeah, I want to do some work. They said that's how they want to address it. So those are your 5 recruits. So you tell them, well, let's organize a meeting, get everybody there, and you organize a block party. You get a little money. You can do a block party with 500 people with a couple $100. You can pass the hat around and do that. How do I know this? I've done it, you all, many times. So you can do that. Like, bourgeoisie idealism. Well, we can't have a block party because we got to get permits. We got to get, it's thousands of dollars. You don't need no damn look, go knock on the doors. Talk to the people. What, you think people in the community, oh, you want to organize an event to end the community abuse? Yeah, I'm against that. No, that's not going to, even if someone is against it, you organize other people in the community to deal with them. They know them. They live on the block with them. They can take care of that. That's organization. That's how that works. So you have a block party. You have music. You have some food. You have speakers. You get the people you recruited, the 5 leaders, to talk about what you want to do. You ask people to sign up. Let us know you're interested. Now, from that, you got 75 people that are interested. Now you're off and running. You got to start. And you use these activities like the block party, again, to inform, to recruit, but mostly to create the culture. You're creating a culture in the community that abuse is not acceptable. And relying on police to solve our problems is not acceptable. You're engaging in work. You have literature. You have everything that's designed to send that message, to start to educate people. You have an information table. People hear the speakers, they read the literature, they come up to the table, they ask, why I live here? I don't know. It seems like the police, and you explain to them, well, this is the reason why we say the police are not the solution. And you have conversations, you have organizing conversations. If people will understand it, you'll get enough people just in that one day that will understand it to help you get a firm footing to start the work. You don't have to get everybody to agree. You just have to get enough people to begin the process. So that's what you're doing. And then while you're focusing on these key people, you're guiding them to become leaders in their community. You don't live there. You're not the leader. You're the spark. You're setting the spark. That's your job. They're the leaders in the community. So you're guiding them to do that. So you're mentoring them. You're coaching them. You're coaching them up on what steps to take, to do this work. And then you strengthen your structures. Like, you have to have the foundation, which we've talked about in the chapter 4, political education. So that meeting you had with the 5 people, you have reading for that. And you have discussion, and you do that every time. And you explain to all the other 70 people that signed up at the block party, you got to commit to read, to be a part of this. We want to educate. Why are you doing that? Because you're trying to make the point of connecting the issues in that neighborhood to the issues in the broader city, in the broader state, in the country, in the world, because they're the same issues. And there's a movement in the world that your work in that neighborhood can be linked to. That's how we're going to win. So that's why you establish those. And all the other tools we talked about in chapter 3 and 4, criticism, self-criticism, democratic centralism. You start practicing those tools and those institutions, and you normalize them becoming how things get done. So when you get to the point where I've been, where you can sit down with 10 women and you can make a list of who the abusers are, and you've organized a program where you have a plan and action, and you've had self-defense training, conflict de-escalation training, and all 10 of these women have had it. And then you can go out here and you can, based on the list, you got 4 abusers in that 10 block radius. Everybody knows who they are, and you can confront them. It's not me confronting them, although I've done enough confronting those kind of people, but it's not me doing it, because the lesson I learned is I used to do it by myself, and I used to go to jail for doing that. I've been to jail for beating up domestic abusers, because I did it by myself. And what that taught me, I'm trying to tell you all, I've done this. I've learned. I know how to do it right. So what I've learned is that, no, don't do it by yourself. Have the community do it. That's how you do it. That's how you protect everybody. So everybody goes and warns these people, you know, and you create resources. We've talked about this in the book. You know, we're getting ahead. Chapter 6 and 7 deal with this, so I won't get into it now, but you organize resources so that you have a place to send people who want help. Because we're trying to, as Mao Zedong said, cure the sickness and save the patient. So if people want to do better, we want to give them the opportunity to do that. But if they don't want to do better, we want to make sure they understand your abusive behavior will no longer be tolerated here. And were you going to call the police on me? No. The way these sisters told this dude, if you don't leave, if you're here 24 hours from now, you're the one that's going to be needing to call the police. And that's the stage that we want to get to. I didn't have to say a word. I didn't have to say a word. My work was done at that point. If you're an organizer, you know your job is to organize yourself out of a job. That's what it's all about. So chapter 5 gives you some concrete steps. You should get the book and look at it. If it doesn't make sense to you, again, we can't explain it all in an hour, but you should reach out. You know, there are some people reaching out, not enough. Like the level of people that reach out and ask for clarity on this work should tell us that this work is happening correctly everywhere. And we all know that's not true. No one would say this work doesn't need to happen. But the fact that people aren't doing that, it's like, it just tells me we're not really ready yet. So we're going to keep engaged. We're going to keep agitating, hoping to get folks ready to do this work, because this is the work that will solve these problems. We believe that. And we know deep down inside you believe that. That's why you're here. So we want to thank you for coming again. And we want to invite you to come back and tell people, if it was your first time or if it was your 50th time, try to bring someone else next week. Next week on our Ancestors Voices, the 24th, same time, same place. We're going to be dealing with chapter 6, which gets more into what I talked about, the resources that how you organize your resources to do community defense when your project is underway. So join us for that. You should join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. You can go to aaprp-intl.org and you can do that. We ask you to do that. And I just want to, before I continue, go in there. There's a comment about, yeah, I mean, there's so much abuse and that's terrible. And, you know, there's an ask for my help. I mean, really, like, my plate is overwhelming. I think that, you know, it's terrible that people are suffering, but I honestly believe this, you all, that until we start doing this kind of organizing work, that's going to continue. You know, we can help one person here, one person there, and that's fine and beautiful work, but that's not the lane that I need to be in. I'm trying to build structures so we can eradicate the problem. So that's where I'm going to focus my energy and time. And I don't care if it takes 25 years and I die, I'm going to lay the foundation so that we can eventually get there. Because I don't want to just be one person here, one person there. I want to solve the problem. And I think that we can do that. So let's continue to do that. So go to aprp-intl.org and we can join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. If you're qualified to do that, we encourage you to do that. You can go to betterworld.me, which is my site. Donate while you're there. That would be wondrous. And all of these programs are housed there. If you want to go back and listen to any of the 90 programs that Shukura and I have done, you can do that. They're all here. I'm also on the editorial team with the Hood Communist Collective, hoodcommunist.org. It's a collection of revolutionary African writings by African organizers and activists all over the world. So we encourage you to check out the blog, hoodcommunist.org. We have my bi-monthly Telegram events on Thursday, 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Eastern time. We'll be having a topic this Thursday, so we invite you to come out. And I want to really give thanks. People are saying they need clarification, so reach out. abetterworld.me. Let's talk. I'd love to talk to you. If you want clarification on how to do something, let's follow up and do the work. And I want to give love to my friend and comrade Shan in Colorado. I love you, appreciate you too. Thank you for being you. Always here for you. We are one. Join these other broadcasts here, APRP broadcast, Pontula podcast, Mondays, Revolutionary African Women, last Saturday of the month, Forward Ever on Spotify. Our comrades in New Mexico have a newscast Thursday, 12 noon, mentioned our ancestors' voices. Want to continue to strongly encourage you to get the book I wrote, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. It's that book that we're breaking down. It's that book that I'm engaged in numerous community defense projects around the country, helping guide. Wear me out, put me in the hospital organizing. I mean, I'm serious. I want to do this work. You know, I don't want to just write a book and sit back. I want to do the work. So reach out, please. Have a good rest of your Sunday afternoon. We appreciate you joining. We hope you come back next week. Remember, capitalism is a vicious and backward system. Patriarchy is a vicious and backward system. White supremacy is a vicious and backward system. Homophobia is a vicious and backward system. The only solution that we have to solve all of these problems is we have to get organized. As Kwame Ture said, organization is the weapon of the oppressed. Let's get organized. Have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. Forward to one unified socialist Africa. Be strong. Don't let these people discourage you. We are winning. Forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your day.